Well, and especially in this moment, I love this time of day because this is just such a reminder that every day we have a chance to start over. You know, it's another brand new day in the journey, another brand new day in our life.
Occasionally, I want a chance to start over.
Don't we all? We get that opportunity every day. What's the matter, grandson? Justin plopped down on the porch steps and dust rose off his clothes. He was silent for a moment, as if he couldn't find the right words to speak. My life, Justin finally sighed with exasperation. Everything seems so difficult, so confusing. I'm not sure how or why it all happened, but I'm lost, Grandpa. I feel empty inside. Justin shifted restlessly as he sat. Every day I get up, go to work, and come home dead tired. Then I eat, go to bed, and just do it all again. For what? Justin wanted an answer that Grandpa couldn't give him. I had such big dreams when I was a kid. My life is just a complete mess now. I moved to Sunlight because I thought it would be different from Solitary. It's a different location, but I've got the same problems. I'm DJ Vanis, an enrolled tribal member of the Ottawa Nation and the author of this book, The Tiny Warrior. And today, I'll be sharing some lessons from this book and how they relate to our life, our journey. Just like the main character in this book, we all struggle at times. But also just like the main character in the book, sometimes our pride and ego get in the way of asking others for help. What we're going to do today, sharing these lessons, how they relate to our life, our career, but also how they relate to survival situations in an environment like this, which on the surface looks beautiful, but if we're not prepared and if we don't have the right tools, sometimes we can run into challenges.
And my name is Steve Jenkins. I'm a good friend of DJ Vanis. We've known each other for quite a few years. Right off, I was impressed with him and his ability to motivate people, to help them with their life struggles, and get them in a better place. So we've come together today to talk about life's lessons and lessons that we learn in the great outdoors. DJ told me that his grandfather told him that the outdoors really are a laboratory for us to learn. I've always felt that when we come here, we learn intellectually, but also mentally and physically, and to a degree spiritually. So today we're going to look at those life lessons, how we can learn, how we can grow, and we're going to compare them or do a similitude to survival, and how everyone can come out and enjoy the outdoors, stay safe, stay responsible, and return alive. T.S. Eliot gave one of my favorite quotes. He said, "We must not cease from exploration, and in the end of all of our exploring, we'll arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." I think that to really appreciate where we're from, we have to get out and do that exploring. And then we finally understand where we're from.
I agree.
Our base.
Our elders always said in our culture that the outdoors were our greatest classroom, that nature would teach us about everything we need to be a success in this life if we just observe. And when we come out to an environment like this, we're able to reconnect on such a deep level. It gives us perspective, context about what we go through, what's precious in life, and also the moments that we have in an environment like this are the ones that create lifetime memories.
They do. I like to think of it as a mountaintop view. When you get on top of a mountain and you look down, the problems that seem so pressing at the time are minuscule compared to our life.
Perspective is what we all need, especially in a chaotic world and in a time like we live in now, where the speed of life is the speed of light. To be able to come out to an environment like this, to slow down, to really reconnect at a deeper level, gives us the balance that we need in very tough times.
And these are tough times. I mean, we all feel the pressures within our family, within our nation.
Right.
And I think we need that outdoor perspective to just take a step back and realize what's most important to us in life.
Absolutely. So we're on the journey.
We're on the warrior's path.
And the goal today is to share lessons that will help strengthen us as we're on the journey, so we can get more out of life. We can overcome the challenges that we're undoubtedly going to face as we have every day of our life up to this point.
I think you can relate that to survival in that the knowledge, the skills, and the tools you need to get by in life, you also need certain skills, knowledge, and tools to survive any given day.
Absolutely.
We need to prepare people to enjoy the recreation, to enjoy being outdoors, but do it responsibly and safely. So I guess the end goal is to return home safe, just like we have end goals in life, but we have to remember to enjoy the path, enjoy the journey along the way.
And we can do that when we're prepared. When we have the right preparation, the right mental mindset, the right tools at our side, then we actually do enjoy the journey that we're on. So I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good one.
Good. Well, there's a degree of comfort if you're prepared. And so let's get on with the day and enjoy it.
All right.
DJ, I and everybody in my family loved your book.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, the subtitle to The Tiny Warrior is A Path to Personal Discovery and Achievement. And that's what we're on here. We're on a path. We're on the journey. You know, the scenery changes. We learn more as we go. We continue to get better at what we do if we have that vision.
I'm just enjoying the pathway right now.
Me too.
I think sometimes if we get so fixed and focused on that peak, that end goal, we forget to enjoy where we are. I mean, the trees, the mountains, the grass, the flowers, just the fresh air and the smell of pine trees, that we really don't enjoy life along the way. How do you feel about that?
Well, what a shame. What a shame to miss out on the process. I mean, look where we're at. I mean, to miss out on this because we're so focused on just the end result. We miss out on the entire process that it took, the adventure that it took to get us there in the first place. And so much of life is like that. We're always delaying that happiness. You know, we wait. It's like standing in line at a carnival to get on a ride. You're standing in line and you wait for an hour and you finally get there and you get that burst of joy that lasts for 2 minutes. And then you have to go back and wait in line for another hour to ride again. You know, my philosophy is you're on the ride. This is the ride. You know, when you come out to a place like this, you know, we have goals, but we have to enjoy the process. You know, when they always say life is a journey, this is the ride. We're on it now. And all the moments that are involved in it, that are part of it, should be enjoyed just like the end result.
I noticed this morning that when the bald eagle flew over, you just stopped. You just paused everything and just watched that bald eagle land, look us over, and then fly on. And I noticed you did the same thing when that sun just barely came over the peak this morning, that you just stopped as if it was the most special moment in your life.
Sacred moment. You know, and those are the ones that we miss if we're so focused on everything else. You know, and we're not in that moment when it happens. We miss out on that gift. We miss that opportunity. And that's really what it comes back to, is when you come to a place like this, it reminds us all over again, every moment is meant to be enjoyed. Not just the moment that happens a month from now or 5 years from now, this moment and the next. And every once in a while, the Creator will give you a gift like this morning of having an eagle fly right over us, or having that sun being here at the exact moment that that sun came up. Those are moments that not only create memories, but it flavors the life and the journey that we're on.
So often people are so focused on graduation or...
We always put happiness out in front of us. We never allow ourselves to actually get there. We say things, and I hear these conversations all the time. I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I graduate. I'll be happy when I get a job. I'll be happy when I get married. I'll be happy when I get divorced. I'll be happy when I get remarried. I'll be happy when we have kids, when the kids grow up. We always put this happiness out in front of us, and it's kind of like chasing the end of a rainbow. You know, we never actually get there, and we never allow ourselves to fully embrace what life can be. You know, happiness is not an event. It's not a goal to accomplish. It's a decision that we make in our own lives. And when we do that, then we actually enjoy the journey, the adventure of life.
I think if we look at a survival situation, people are out enjoying nature. And if they get too caught up in just what they're doing and then forget the end goal, they end up lost.
True.
And
So
then-
we always have to keep those two in balance, right? Keep the end goal in mind, but also pay attention to the moments that are happening as we proceed.
Yeah. And then in a survival situation, then the end goal becomes get home alive.
Right.
And our total goal changes, our total focus changes.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we want to teach people enough about survival and enough about being in the outdoors that they can enjoy it, but yet return home safely and responsibly. We'll go through some of those things today.
Mm-hmm.
I think the lifelong skills that you're going to cover to help a person through life, and then just the more basic skills that we'll cover together on how you'll enjoy the outdoors and yet survive.
In our Native American culture, the way that we transmitted information, knowledge, values, and virtues was around the campfire. Listening to the elders tell stories, to share lessons, to share morals, was what made us who we were as a people. That was what created the body of knowledge that we operated our lives with, around the campfire. And in this book, I'm going to share a story that will highlight one of those pieces of information on what it truly means to be a warrior. One day, a hunting party from a neighboring village paid a visit, and there was a feast to celebrate their arrival. A great warrior named War Club led the hunting party. Tribes across the land recognized him for his courage and feats in battle. Cricket would often sneak out at night to hear stories about him around the campfires. When Cricket's uncle Pipestone carried a gift of wrapped tobacco to the hunting party one night, Cricket followed close behind. Cricket considered this a perfect opportunity to see a mighty warrior up close. Before he knew it, Cricket was inside War Club's lodge. Uncle Pipestone gave War Club the tobacco and then looked down to see Cricket standing at his side. "War Club, this is my nephew Cricket," Pipestone said proudly. War Club nodded silently to Cricket, who was breathless and wide-eyed from seeing the warrior up close. Battle scars riddled War Club's brown skin, and he was as tall as a canoe. His arms were logs, his chest was a granite slab, and his head a cooking pot. Cricket now understood why others revered War Club as one of the mightiest warriors in the land. Cricket left the lodge and walked alone for a while, depressed. Meeting War Club only made his dream feel more out of reach. After all, Cricket was often teased for being so small and skinny compared to the other children his age. When a vivid image of War Club's mighty stature floated through his mind, he thought, "I'll never be a warrior." Traditionally, what it meant to be a warrior in our culture is very different from what we see in the media today. Being a warrior in our culture wasn't about being the toughest person on the block. It wasn't about what we could get. It was about what we could do. It was a role rooted in service. It was about taking our Creator-given talent and ability, developing it over a lifetime, so that we could truly be an asset or a benefit to the village that we served. It wasn't a role that was based on personal glory. It was a role that was based on what we could do to help and protect others. And when we go back to that traditional role, it's a path that we can all walk if we know what it looks like and if we understand the importance and value of what it can mean in our life.
DJ, that's a fascinating story, and I think we can all relate to it. It can help us establish what we want to accomplish in life and our end goals. Sometimes we get so focused and so fixated on that end goal, we forget to enjoy life. We forget to enjoy every single day, the flowers, nature, the things that we should be enjoying, and sometimes even our family. How do you feel about setting those end goals, but yet enjoying the path, or the warrior's path, that you call it?
Well, we can all relate to that, and what a shame to miss out on the process of life, only looking for those high moments where we actually accomplish the goal. The process of getting to the goal is what makes life an adventure. Just like in the book, the goal that Cricket had set for himself to be a warrior feels like a lot of the goals we set in our own life and career and with our families. Sometimes those goals seem so big, so out of reach, so intimidating that we lose heart fear and doubt creep in. We lose faith in who we are and what we can do. But when we get grounded and we get refocused in where we're headed, it starts to drive us forward. But the process tends to get diluted when we're only thinking about the end result and not enjoying the journey. You know, if my goal was to climb that mountain, what a waste it would be to miss out on all this, to miss out on the lake and the ducks and the eagle that just flew by and the trees and the forest. You know, just to only focus on reaching that high point leaves everything else off the table.
So if your goal was just physical, you could do that on a stair stepper. Or if your
Right.
goal was just to be there, you could drive a car or get a ride up there.
Absolutely.
But the journey along the way is what makes it enjoyable and makes you have that sense of accomplishment.
Notice how the water flows smoothly until it gets to this point, and then it has to take a new action if it wants to keep flowing in the direction of its goals. Becoming a warrior does require much learning and training, but it's not impossible, Cricket. It will take persistence and patience, he explained. With wet hands, Pipestone stroked his scalp lock, the long lock of ebony hair on his shaved head. He then pointed at the river. Your answers lie here, Cricket, he continued, admiring the flowing waters. Pipestone picked up his nets and waded out into the river. Cricket was confused, and he sat for a long time looking around for the answers to his questions. He became mesmerized watching the crystal waters swirl and bubble among the rocks. When the sun started sinking below the birch-covered hillside, Pipestone packed his nets and the fish he'd caught. Donning his moccasins, he decided to help his nephew understand the lesson. What does water do when it comes to a rock, nephew? Pipestone asked. Cricket's face twisted with thought as he looked at the racing river current. It goes over it, Cricket finally answered with a toothy smile. Right, it goes over it, or? Cricket pondered carefully during the short silence. Around it, Cricket exclaimed. Or? Under it. Yes, nephew, and if the water cannot find any other way, with time and persistence, the water will go through the rock, one grain at a time. Once the water knows where it wants to go, it's unstoppable. It always finds a way to get there.
Right now, we're completely surrounded by water. Most people in a survival situation don't have that luxury. The ability to find clean, pure water and purify it for our consumption is essential in any survival situation. DJ, maybe you could tell us about the importance of water in our lives.
Well, we don't realize how important something is until we don't have it. Going through military survival school, and especially our traditional ceremonies in our native culture, we really realize the power that water has in our lives and how important it is to our survival. A lot of the ceremonies we go without water to have a deeper appreciation and understanding to how vital to our lives it actually is.
Which ceremonies do you go without water?
Our Sundance ceremony, we go without water during the day. We get a little ladle of it at night in the sweat lodge. During Vision Quest, you go 4 days and 4 nights without water. And that's really where you're reminded and for the rest of your life how important water is. There's times where I drink a glass of water and say a prayer as I do because I'm reminded again of how precious that is to us.
You know, something as simple as a filter, a ceramic filter that takes out Giardia lambia, takes out amoebic dysentery, or any of the parameciums, can be a tool that we shouldn't leave home without.
Right.
There's many models available now, but just a little ceramic filter to take out those impurities. You can boil water, but at our altitude, that might take as much as 5 minutes. You can also use iodine to purify water chemically. But water is essential for a survival situation.
Well, especially with this, if you have water that isn't clean or good for you, and you're in a survival situation, things can go really quickly from bad to worse. So that's why this is so vital to our survival in a bad situation.
Uncle, I still don't know why I act the way I do sometimes, Cricket confessed. Pipestone's eyes sparkled. Don't worry, Cricket. I've discovered who's to blame for all your misbehaving. Really, Uncle? Cricket felt better already, knowing he wasn't the reason. Who is it? Cricket asked. He lives in Blue Pond. When you peer over the edge, you'll see the one to blame, and you can ask him to stop getting you into trouble. But watch out, he's an ugly little cuss and can be rowdy. Be cautious. Cricket headed to Blue Pond, a bit nervous. He chewed on a piece of sage and tried to enjoy the perfect day. When he arrived, he got on his belly and crawled to the bank. Just as his uncle had told him, Cricket slowly peered over the edge. He could see a head emerging. It had a tuft of wild hair, small ears, and 2 big eyes. It had a button nose and rounded cheeks. Why, it was Cricket. When he smiled, the lake smiled. When he laughed, the lake laughed with him. But when he scowled and stuck his tongue out, the lake returned the insult. Cricket sat there for quite some time and heard his mother's voice. When you arise in the morning to greet the sun, do so with joy in your heart, and the world will return it. That's how life works, like a big mirror. So oftentimes what we put out is exactly what we get back in return. That's why it's always important that we understand the impacts of the way we treat other people and the way that we treat the world around us.
DJ, I love that story because it shows ownership for our own problems, not only in life, but in a survival situation. If we become lost, if we become injured, or we don't have the right equipment to stay warm, that's our own fault. Our lack of preparation and our lack of having the right equipment is really our responsibility.
Well, when we look at the world as a whole, we only have control really over one thing, our own choices, our own thoughts, our own actions, and what we decide to do in any given moment. But with that power, we have the ability to get home safely.
Sun's setting a little low, isn't it?
Sure is. Beautiful valley. Wow.
You know, DJ, this tree reminds me of the maple tree in your book, that story you talk about,
Oh yeah,
cricket. It's kind of neat.
sure does. See if I can find that one. Yeah.
And, it's such a good teaching tool, especially for youth that are trying to get through school.
Yeah, find your way. Still feeling ashamed for letting the village fire go out, Cricket slunk off into the woods for solitude. He found a huge maple tree, rested his head on the roots, and slowly began to cry. Only moments had passed when the old maple spoke. "I can't live on the salt water in your tears, little boy." "You can talk?" asked the startled Cricket. "Of course. Everything in nature has a voice if people will only listen. Now, why are you crying?" "I'll never be a warrior," Cricket sobbed. "It's too hard. There's too much to it." The maple began to chuckle, and Cricket felt frustration rising in him. "What's so funny?" the sad little boy demanded. Cricket stood and adjusted his breechcloth. "That I have no eyes and can see better than you," the maple responded. "Through the years I've endured wind, rain, drought, fire, snow, lightning, and floods. It has twisted me. I've lost branches, and I've almost died many times. Still, I live. Through it all, I've become stronger. You see, those things are hard to survive, but I have a purpose in my life." The proud tree seemed to grow 10 feet just mentioning this. "I serve as a home to the squirrel family, the bird family, and a bee colony." The massive maple pointed with the delicate tips of its branches as it spoke. "I provide sap for your people and shade so moss and mushrooms can grow. The more I think about my purpose, the deeper my roots grow." "What is your purpose?" "To be a warrior," Cricket shouted after drying his tears with his arm. "Why?" the maple inquired. Cricket was confused. He'd never thought about that. The maple spoke one last time. "You see, little boy, until you know your purpose, everything you do will be too hard."
I guess my question is, how does knowing your purpose make things easier for you?
Well, it gives us an ability to ground ourselves, to really be focused on a central thing. It keeps us, I think, just like the tree with the roots, it keeps those roots growing deeper and deeper and firmer in the ground that we find ourselves on the journey.
I've noticed when I was in college that classes that that I didn't enjoy and didn't give me a purpose or weren't a part of my vision were much harder, much more difficult. Other classes that seemed to fit in and seemed to really fit me, even though the difficulty level was harder, I enjoyed studying. I enjoyed working harder because it seemed to have a purpose.
Well, that's where motivation comes from. Once we know what our purpose is, those things that we have to do to get through the challenges don't seem like quite a roadblock. It gives us drive, it gives us an ability to get through those sticky parts of the journey because we realize we're doing it for a greater reason.
Talking about sticky parts of the journey, have you ever been lost or turned around in the outdoors?
I think anybody who's spent time in the outdoors has had that experience.
Well, and that's true, and that's why I always take a survival kit with me.
Right.
I like talking about them. I like talking about what's in them. You talked about the purpose that the great maple tree had and that cricket would someday have.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in this has a purpose. It's kind of like the community. It's much stronger as a whole.
Right.
So we could go through and analyze every single thing in this kit, talk about its purpose, and it would make sense as a whole. It would be a good and useful survival kit. So we'll kind of do that now. As the sun sets and we have a chance to talk by the fire, we'll talk about a survival kit. Each one of those components can be compared to life. I really like your analogy of the fire and what it provides for us. In the Native American culture, isn't the fire where you go for education, for intelligence?
That was our classroom in the village. That was where we all gathered to hear the wisdom that the elders had to offer, where we transmitted information and knowledge, where people learned what they needed to survive and thrive in the world. That was a central meeting spot. That's where we all gathered.
Nice. Let's go find our fire spot and have a nice little discussion.
Sounds good.
So now that we're here by the fire, your book has an excellent story on teaching youth that we've been talking about to take responsibility.
Right, and not just taking responsibility, but upholding the responsibilities that we sign up for. You know, sometimes taking the responsibility is the part that we get the positive attention for. Upholding the responsibility is where the work comes in.
Well, I'd love to hear that story again. Do you have it in your book?
Absolutely.
Could you read that for me?
I'd be happy to. This one is called Keeping the Fires Lit, which is very appropriate for where we are right now. One night, Cricket couldn't sleep. Thunder rumbling in the distance kept him awake, so he decided to sneak out of his lodge and look for adventure. Wandering toward the village fire, he noticed the outline of the firekeeper, Cloudman, in front of the dancing tails of orange. Cloudman looked nervous as Cricket approached. "What's the matter, Cloudman?" Cricket whispered. "It's my wife, Cricket. We're about to have our first baby." Cloudman replied with a grimace as he stared into the bright flames. "Then why don't you go to your lodge?" Cricket asked. "I'd like to, but I can't, Cricket. My responsibility is to the village as firekeeper. This fire represents the spirit of our people and must never go out. The village depends on it. I'll have to wait until morning." Just then, Cloudman's sister came running up to him. "Come quickly, your wife needs you," she said, wide-eyed. Cloudman felt torn. "I can watch the fire for you, Cloudman," Cricket volunteered with an eager sparkle. "Go ahead, I can do it." After some debate, Cloudman accepted Cricket's offer and hurried to the lodge where his wife labored. Now, Cricket really felt like a grown-up. He sat near the fire, putting on the wood as Cloudman had shown him before going to his wife. Cricket watched the fire dance and flicker. The warmth made him so comfortable that he soon fell asleep, even though he promised he wouldn't. Early in the morning, a group of angry hunters from his village nudged Cricket awake. They had been lost in the fog on their way home from the hunt and had depended on the light of the village fire to guide them, but it wasn't there. The hunters looked dirty, hungry, and tired. Cricket realized that one of them had even been injured. He felt horrible. "I couldn't help it," Cricket stuttered. "The fire was so warm and I was so tired, The hunters slowly turned and walked away. Nothing Cricket said, no excuse, seemed to make him or the hunters feel better. He had broken his commitment to Cloudman, the hunters, and the village.
DJ, that's a powerful story. I really like how it points out the results of our inaction, of not accepting fully and fulfilling our responsibility, and people get hurt.
Right.
Young kids don't always realize that.
Right. And And we've all stumbled, in situations like that where we've had a responsibility and have let it falter. But in those moments, we also realize the pain that it didn't just affect us, but it affected all the other people that look to us to uphold that responsibility. So that's why we constantly have to make sure that we're accepting, not just accepting the responsibility, but working hard to uphold that as we go forward.
When we go in group settings, we go out in the outdoors to enjoy nature, and you take your family.
Mm-hmm.
They really look to you to uphold your responsibility to keep them safe.
Right.
As a family, as your two young girls and your
Mm-hmm.
wife. And because they are your family and they're so precious, you do that willingly.
Right.
When we go with a group of individuals and we have a responsibility to keep them safe, if any one person in that group doesn't do their responsibility, the whole party could suffer.
Right.
And you've got a story about coyotes that I really like. I'd like you to read that as well. To me, that just demonstrates the importance of choosing your partners carefully.
That was actually one of my favorite chapters to write. It's called Choose Your Pack. And it's a story about Cricket as he comes across a group of coyotes. And they have what he wants so desperately, which is what seems like a group of friends that take care of each other. And the coyotes see that in him, and they lure him into their group. And what they end up doing is making him do all the work. They don't put any effort into the gathering of food. They make him do everything that they can't or are too lazy to do. And he realizes something really quickly. They're getting fat and lazy, and he's doing all the work. And one of the times, the leader of the coyote pack, Backbone, wants his favorite delicacy, fish. And so he cajoles Cricket into going for that and running along the rocks and trying to spear some fish for his new group of friends. And what happens is he falls into the river, and as he gets whisked away, he asks for their help, and they're nowhere to be found. Well, they are there to be found, but they're laughing at him as he gets whisked away. And it was a painful lesson for him on who really is a friend, and it should be based on, especially in a group where you're depending on each other, like you said, for safety, for even survival, that you not only mutually respect each other, mutually hold each other accountable for responsibilities, but also have trust, that glue that really is the foundation of every relationship.
Yeah, and that binds the group together. The reason that story is interesting to me is the coyote is always selected as the joker or the trickster,
right,
in Native American lore.
Right.
And he fit that role perfectly in this story. There's also a sense for young men, a strong desire to want to be a part of a group.
Right.
It's why we do sports, football teams, basketball teams, Boy Scouting, so they can be part of a group. If that's not provided for them, and this is why your story is so full of wisdom, they'll join a gang.
Right.
Just to be a part of the group. And they'll be used as a pawn, like you're saying.
Well, we all have a need to feel valued. And it's a need that you have, I have, our kids have it, our friends have it. And if we don't have that need fulfilled by the right source, what happens is, especially with youth, sometimes they'll go for the wrong. But they do have to have that need fulfilled. We all do. Yeah. It's just as we become adults and express more maturity, we're more selective in who we spend time with, who we call a friend, who we build relationships with, built on the right foundation and not seeking to fill that square peg with a round, or square hole with a round peg.
Yeah. In terms of outdoors and survival, okay, it is a good idea always to travel in a group,
right,
always to take a companion with you, at least one.
Right.
And each person has a responsibility. And if you don't select that pack carefully, if you're out with the wrong people, it can get you into trouble. I've been there many times.
Right.
Following the wrong person can get you lost, and that's true in life and in the outdoors.
Right.
Being with somebody that makes you do all the work, that gives you all the responsibility, can really overwork you and make it not enjoyable. But people that are unsafe hunting or camping can injure you or themselves.
Right. Yeah, the stakes can be quite high.
They can.
So
Now,
it's important
instantly,
that people have those skill sets and again, not just accepting the responsibility, but upholding it.
So choose your partners carefully.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very good story.
Thank you.
DJ, we've talked through the day about survival kits and what's in there, and I do overkill sometimes on the survival kits.
There's never overkill on a survival kit.
Well, you went clear through survival school in the military. I'll bet that was an experience.
It was. It was a great experience because the skills that you learn there are skills you can directly apply to life. Be prepared. Learn what you need to survive and thrive in whatever environment you're in. And when you have tools like this, they enable you to do just that.
Yeah. Typically, I'll bring that little kit. I'll use that most of the time. It's easier to carry. And it has everything that I need in there. It has fire, shelter, and signal. I've got a bigger kit today that I wear to teach with, and if I'm going in the backcountry, I'll use that. Shelter is really one of your key components in a survival kit. I have a survival blanket. These silk scarves will keep a lot of warmth in around your chest, neck, and head area. And when I sleep at night, I actually pull those right up over my face and breathe through them.
Nice.
So it's a great survival tool, a good way to provide shelter. Fire, obviously we've got a fire started. I like to use cotton balls and these wax cups, and I can start a fire in virtually any condition. It doesn't need to be dry. I'll just put a wax cup, frayed edges, put a cotton ball in there, and just with a striker, start that cotton ball and I've got a fire. So I usually have 4 or 5 different methods of starting a fire. Yeah, it is. We've taught a lot today about keeping our direction, finding our direction. Have you ever seen one of these?
Oh, yes.
It's a military compass. And these things will be light in a closet at night for forever because they've got a iridium dial. Is that what it is? The compass is interesting. They were first invented by the Chinese at 270 BC. And then they weren't used in navigation until the 11th century. And not until the 20th century did we develop a liquid-filled compass that was very, very dependable. The way they work is they align with the magnetic pull towards the North and the South Pole. There's another type of compass called a gyro compass, which as it rotates, aligns itself with the rotation of the Earth. So that's even much more accurate. If it gets off alignment a little bit, the friction causes it to go right back in. How does that compass and that alignment cause us or help us to be aligned in our lives?
When we spoke earlier, we talked about purpose. We talked about vision. Those things that give us the true north, in our own life, in our own career. Knowing which direction is right for us, depending on where we're headed, what's important to us, what we value. Once we know what that looks like, we're able to keep clarity on the journey. We're not pulled left and right. We're not tempted to go down the wrong path because we know where we're headed and why it's important to us.
I like to think of those magnetic pulls as the things that help us succeed. Our work ethics, our morals, our values.
Absolutely.
And if we get crosswise of that pull, we only hurt ourselves.
We feel it too, don't we?
Yeah.
I mean, when we feel that gut level pull that says, this isn't the right decision for us in this moment, we get that sensation for a reason. It's because it violates our own values, the own choices we make about the journey ahead. Mm-hmm. When we have that clarity, everything in life becomes easier. That's what I always share with people is once we know what our values are, our direction, our purpose, everything becomes easier. Because now we know what to say yes to, but now we also know what to say no to, and there's power in both.
Yeah. Another thing I like to keep in my survival kit is your book. And
for around the campfire.
Yep,
right?
And a signal mirror. A signal mirror can be very effective at signaling that we need help at long ranges. These things can be seen from mountain peak to mountain peak, sometimes as far as 50 miles, 60 miles, we'll use these signal mirrors. But it is a last resort when we need help, when we need the search and rescue team to come in and save us. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly why I like to keep your book around. People get lost in life.
Right.
They do. And they need help. And I know you do that. as a living. You help people. You go around and help them get aligned. You help them find themselves. So in addition to making a living, it's a very good and charitable thing that you do. I'll bet it's enjoyable for you.
It's an honor to do it, and there is a lot of joy associated with using what the Creator gave you to help other people find their own path. I've always felt it was a privilege. It's a blessing to be able to do this kind of work, to have written something like that has affected people in a deep way. I'm very humbled by the letters that I've received over the years, the face-to-face testimonials that people have shared about the book, and a lot of times it comes back to that very language, that the message in the book has helped them find their path. I never wrote the book to show them or to encourage people to get on my path. We all have our own path to walk on the journey, but it's a true joy for me to help people get alignment and find their direction, their purpose, and have that book help them find their path on the journey.
Yeah. Well, a few other things that I have in my kit. I've got, again, the fire shelter and signal. Lots of signal and lots of fire. I have a water purifier. We talked about that earlier today when you, by the stream, talked about overcoming obstacles. I also mentioned the 3 different ways of purifying water.
Right.
We have Giardia lambia in our water. We have parameciums or amoebic dysentery. The way to purify our water is to filter it first or boil it 5 minutes or more, or we can use a chemical, a tincture of iodine. So those are the ways that we would purify our water. Down in this pouch, I have just all first aid items. If you're around Boy Scouts and youth, or if you don't pick your pack carefully, you're going to have injuries.
Right.
People do things that aren't always smart and aren't always careful. And so they're going to need to be fixed up, and you've been through survival training. A lot of that was first aid medical training, wasn't it?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that's where conditions in a survival situation go from bad to worse, is when you're not only lost, hungry, cold, but on top of it you have an injury that was caused by a moment of carelessness or not being safe with the equipment that you have.
Yeah. First aid is an essential element. Well, we've covered a lot today. The sun's about gone.
Right.
It's kind of cool. I don't plan on spending the night, so I'm going to rely on you to get us out of here.
Well, I'm going to need that compass.